The Cebu provincial government standing pat on its optional face mask policy in a defiant move yet again. Our Cebu-based correspondent Dale Israel joins us live for the details. Dale, what can you tell us?
Despite the calls from Interior Secretary Eduardo Año to continue implementing face mask rules, Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia will continue with her policy. Now, she's signed an executive order which makes optional for people to wear masks in well-ventilated and open spaces in the province. In a statement this morning, the Interior Department refused to recognize that said order and maintained that the IATF guidelines were approved by the President. However, Garcia is counteracting that by citing a section of the local government code which gives the national government only up to 6 months of direct control over the health operations of the local government units in case of a pandemic. On that note, the IATF has already surpassed the period and should need the concurrence of the LGU concerned. Garcia believed that the local autonomy as stipulated under the local government code should prevail over an executive order which created the IATF. Let's listen to Garcia's statement.
It is that we believe it's about time that we rationalize and put some common sense in the wearing of face masks. This executive order further defines when face masks should be used. Not when you're in open, well-ventilated areas.
Now, Secretary Año added that the Philippine National Police should still continue to, quote, confront, apprehend, and arrest, if necessary, all violations of the IATF guidelines in Cebu Province. Garcia, on the other hand, called on Cebu Police Provincial Office and insisted there will be no apprehensions on the face mask rules. She said, if there are violations, just like before, give them masks instead. Now, the governor cleared that the local policy was not born out of, quote, capricious whim, and that every decision she makes is anchored upon existing laws and, more importantly, upon keen observation of the situation here in Cebu. Back to you, Mai.
Thank you, Dale Israel there reporting. The Health Department says the Cebu provincial government did not consult health officials in lifting the face mask mandate outdoors. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere reiterates local governments should follow the interagency task force protocols.
Specifically stated in our IATF resolutions, all public and private sectors and all units under each of these government agencies, including local governments, should comply and abide with the protocols of IATF. RA 11332, notifiable diseases. Kung meron hong public health emergency, the national government has that authority to issue protocols. And these protocols should be complied with by all sectors, including local government.
Vergere says masking is still recommended at this time because of new variants surfacing, a slight uptick in cases, and low booster vaccination rate in other regions. She reiterates masking also protects people against other respiratory illness like cough, the cold, and the monkeypox virus.
Maliit na sakripisyo para maprotektuhan tayong mga kababayan natin, pati ang ating komunidad, ay sana po ay wag po nating kontrahin. Pagamat ang gusto natin sabihin, dahan-dahan lang po tayo, hinay-hinay. Makakarating din po tayo dun sa gusto natin na new normal kung saan wala na tayo lahat restrictions.
When asked to comment about the face mask policy in Cebu, Malacanang says it will defer to the Health Department. Experts say the COVID-19 situation in Metro Manila has become more concerning. The Octa Research Group flags the region's positivity rate, which rose to 2.2% from 1.5% a week ago. The positivity rate refers to the percentage of people with COVID-19 out of those tested. Octa adds the hospital bed occupancy, as well as the reproduction number, or the number of people a single case can infect, also increased. The 7-day average in new cases also exceeded 100 for the first time since April 8. While Metro Manila remains at low risk, Octa advises the public to remain vigilant in observing health protocols. On to another health issue. Some local governments are ramping up information campaigns amid the health department's warning of rising dengue cases. The Navotas City Health Office says it is reaching out to communities to remind people of basic dengue prevention tips. The city logged a total of 70 dengue cases from January to June, 8 of which were recorded just last week. This number is lower compared to the 81 cases from the same period last year, but officials are bracing for more cases.
Nagsimula na rin po kami magsagawa ng mga space spraying, tapos nag-educate na rin po kami sa community para kasi kung kami lang hindi namin kayang sugpuin yung dengue ng kami lang, kailangan namin ng participation ng community. Then yun, nagbigay din kami kanina ng mga insecticides and kung paano gamitin yun, tinuruan din namin sila. Daily na po ang reporting namin ng dengue. Kasi talagang binabantayan namin kasi bukod kasi sa COVID.
The Regional Health Office in Mimaropa is also promoting dengue prevention through social media. It has circulated an educational video about dengue symptoms and how to protect oneself. These include the 4 o'clock daily habit and the 4S method: search and destroy mosquito breeding sites, secure self-protection with proper clothing and repellent, seek early consultation if one has symptoms, and supporting indoor and outdoor spraying to prevent outbreaks. In other news, fewer Filipinos were out of work in April compared to the month prior. The number of jobless people was at 2.76 million, slightly down from 2.87 million in March. The 5.7% unemployment rate was also the lowest since January 2020. The government says assistance is on the way for poor Filipinos. The 500 peso cash aid payout is expected to begin before the month ends.
Isinakaayos na ng tulong na ito. We remain committed.
Of consumers, meanwhile, Meralco announces higher charges. Rates will increase by almost 40 centavos per kilowatt hour this month. This means households consuming 200 kilowatt hours will have to pay 80 pesos more per month. Meralco says the increase in cost is driven by higher generation charges and fuel prices. Authorities are testing the water in other parts of Batangas to find out the extent of arsenic contamination in the province. George Cahiles reports experts will also check these water sources for another dangerous chemical that may cause cancer.
Gloria is 55 years old and lives in Santa Teresita town in Batangas province. She was found with traces of arsenic in her urine.
Bumili daw ako ng tubig.
Bakit daw po?
Dahil sa aking balat.
Experts earlier found high arsenic content in the water in Barangay Burol. Authorities have discouraged the people from drinking tap water and using it for cooking. But some residents like Margarita Gonzalez choose to disregard the warning.
Nakasanayan. Sa totoo lang, nakasanayan. Sa awa naman ng Diyos, wala naman akong naaanuhan pa. Kaya nga lang, long term pala. Pero bahala na ang Diyos doon.
The local government says the toxic chemical has contaminated a third of the area's water sources. It says it is planning to work with water refilling stations to help supply clean and affordable water.
Priority muna yung aming mga barangay na nangangailangan at tutulong kami sa pagbabayad at pagpo-provide ng containers sa deliveries.
As if arsenic contamination is not enough, health experts also trace high levels of radon in some water sources in Batangas.
If it exceeds yung regulated natin, ay masama din siya. Kasi it can cause na cancer of the lungs. Ang matataas talaga yung area na may fissure. Lemery, Taal, Santa Teresita, kasama yan.
Kaya ako tinatanong ang probinsya kung nagkakaroon sila ng pag-aaral o pagsusuri dito sa sakit na ito at sa contamination na yan, upang sa gayon, makita natin kung meron ng relasyon. May correlation ba talaga ito o wala?
The provincial government says it will continue to monitor the situation in affected areas.
Ang unang-una is to continue ang investigation surveillance ng mga wells. And then pangalawa is to come up with the appropriate messaging para naman yung mga tao ay hindi ma-confuse, mag-panic, para mabigyan natin sila ng tamang kaalaman.
Water testing will also cover more areas as local officials provide funds to buy water testing equipment. From Santa Teresita, Batangas, George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Coming up, President-elect Bongbong Marcos says he will continue President Duterte's independent foreign policy amid a fresh diplomatic protest against China. And some tips on how to look out for fake bills as the Bangko Sentral prepares to release more 1,000 peso banknotes to the public. You're watching Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Welcome back. President-elect Bongbong Marcos vows to continue what the Duterte administration has started in foreign policy. He stressed the importance of Philippine-China ties on the heels of a fresh diplomatic protest against Beijing. Joining us live from Makati City is Tristan Nodalo for the details. Tristan, go ahead.
My President-elect Bongbong Marcos calls China as the country's strongest partner to help us, or crucial to the pandemic and economic recovery of the Philippines. Speaking at the awarding ceremony for those who constantly promote Philippine-China understanding, Marcos says our relationship with Beijing is important and evolving. He also plans to continue the Duterte administration's independent foreign policy, but he did not elaborate on the specifics of what he intends to do on the so-called independent foreign policy. The President-elect says the future of the Philippine-China ties does not only focus on government initiatives but also to people-to-people relations.
Perhaps we will continue what President Duterte has started, what has been described as an independent foreign policy. And this is what we feel is best in the national interest. And we can say we are beyond the pandemic crisis. We are beyond the economic crisis brought on by the pandemic. We can only do it, certainly in the Philippines, we can only do it with our partners. And our strongest partner has always been, in that regard, our close neighbor and our good friend, the People's Republic of China.
Meantime, Chinese Ambassador Wang Zhilian believes that the relationship between the two countries will shift to a higher gear under the Marcos presidency. The event comes a day after the Philippines filed a diplomatic protest against China following the return of its vessels in the West Philippine Sea or Julian Felipe Reef. No comments were made by Marcos himself or embassy officials during the event. Also present in the ceremony were former President Erap Estrada, Marcos's wife Lisa, and son Sandro. Also, we've seen the incoming cabinet officials like incoming PCOO Chief Trixie Angeles, incoming National Security Advisor Clarita Carlos, and then we also saw Senator Coco Pimentel, who headed the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations in the 18th Congress. Back to you, Mai.
Thank you. Tristan Nodalo there reporting. President-elect Marcos is committed to addressing the United Nations concerns on the human rights situation in the Philippines. That's according to the UN representative to the Philippines, Gustavo Gonzalez, who met with Marcos today. Gonzalez says they discussed the October 2020 UN resolution that seeks to provide technical assistance to the country amid human rights abuses under the outgoing Duterte administration. The Duterte government has condemned that resolution.
It means the UN and the government needs to work together in addressing some concerns on the human rights. And he is very much interested, for example, in ensuring a consultation for the nomination of the new Commissioner of Human Rights. This was a topic that he immediately raised. And he mentioned also the importance of ensuring a high level of accountability in terms of the human rights.
Marcos met with other ambassadors today, those from Sweden, Ireland, and the Vatican. The Senate majority would have to be consulted on the request of Senator-elect Alan Peter Cayetano to become the chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee. That's according to Senator Migs Zubiri, who is seen as the next Senate president. Zubiri says it's not his decision to make since Senator Francis Tolentino already accepted the Blue Ribbon Committee chairmanship. Cayetano said on Thursday he would only accept Zubiri's invitation for him to become part of the Senate majority if he gets the panel. 18 immigration personnel linked to the Pastillas scam have been dismissed from service. The Justice Department, in its resolution, said the 18 immigration officers and employees are liable for grave misconduct, gross neglect of duty, and conduct prejudicial to the best interest of the service. The BI personnel were said to have allowed entry and exit of Chinese nationals without the regular screening process. The scheme was first discovered in 2020 and was the center of a series of Senate hearings. The administrative case stemmed from the fact-finding committee formed by the Immigration Bureau. Earlier, at least 40 immigration personnel were charged by the Ombudsman with graft before the Sandigan Bayan. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is preparing to increase the circulation of the new 1,000 peso banknote next year. How can the public be on the lookout for fake money? Lois Calderon runs us through some tips and tricks.
The new 1,000 peso banknote is in circulation. Because it's polymer, it's 100% waterproof and does not easily tear. That makes it cheaper for the Bangko Sentral to print money.
England reports a decrease by 25% in production costs. New Zealand decreased by 58% in production note issuance cost as well. And Australia reports $1 billion of cost savings. So optimistic tayo.
At least 500 million new notes with the 1,000 denomination will flow in the financial system by next year. The central bank wants to make sure the banknote you receive is not counterfeit.
Counterfeits are not money, diba? So they do not have value. Therefore, they cannot be exchanged. That's why a person receiving a counterfeit note will take a loss.
Central bank data shows there are 7.9 counterfeits out of 1 million, way below the red flag used internationally.
Nakakainis po kasi syempre napakahalaga ng pera, 'di ba? Tapos pepekein nila. Dinikit po namin siya sa bond paper tapos pinost po namin sa labas ng tindahan.
Nung pinanukli po talaga doon ng nagtitinda.
Kasi ano po ang pakiramdam niyo?
Syempre po masakit kasi pinaghirapan mo yung pera na yun tapos yung matatanggap mo peke lang.
The central bank sums up in 3 words how to check if a banknote is genuine. Feel, look, tilt. Feel its texture. Polymer is smooth. Look for a clear window this side with the Sampaguita icon with embossed lines, and you'll find the letters BSP. Check for metallic features that give the banknote its luster or shine and rainbow colors, and then tilt, and you'll see the shadow thread. The old 1,000 paper notes are still good as legal tender. There's no clear timetable yet when it will be demonetized, as Bangko Sentral Governor Ben Jocno leaves the BSP to become Finance Secretary. But December 2022 is the deadline for banks to recalibrate their ATM and deposit machines so the new polymer banknotes will be recognized. Lois Calderon, CNN, Philippines.
Authorities say the driver's license of the SUV owner in the hit-and-run incident in Mandaluyong may be revoked as he snubbed the second show cause order issued to him. Amor Santos has more.
The owner of the SUV that hit and ran over a security guard in Mandaluyong City is again a no-show at the Land Transportation Office. It's the second time that he snubbed the LTO's show cause order. Officials say this means he'll lose intelligence and investigation.
The alarm, transfer of change of color.
The police filed criminal complaints against SUV owner Jose San Vicente on Monday. He's facing frustrated murder and abandonment of one's own victim before the city prosecutor's office. On the question whether he was also the one driving the SUV during the incident,
yun po yung presumption natin. Kasi wala naman kasing nilulutang na driver.
Meanwhile, the victim, security guard Christian Floralde, was discharged from the hospital Thursday afternoon. He says he's still on painkillers due to abdominal pain. His security agency says it paid less than 200,000 pesos for the hospital bill. The employer says the SUV owner's camp offered to shoulder the medical expenses, but they turned it down. Floralde, meanwhile, has said he will pursue the case against the SUV driver.
Well, una sa lahat, hindi kasi namin priority na ayusin yung kaso na yan. During the time na tumatawag sila sa amin, nasa ICU yung tao namin. I do not know whether my guard can make it or not.
Totoo lang, masama pa rin po yung loob ko sa ginawa niya sa akin. Tinakbuhan niya ako. Hindi man lang siya tumigil. Bago sa iniwanan ako. Pero may Diyos tayo na marunong batawan. Diyos na yung bahala sa kanya.
Police say they are ready to serve the warrant of arrest once issued by the court. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
Entertainment updates still ahead. BTS says the best moment is yet to come, but today comes pretty close for the group's ARMYs. Details about the newly released album and music video after the break.
Marvel at the majestic sceneries of
watching Newsnight. In time for Pride Month, Rebel Wilson comes out by letting people in on her new relationship that's like a fairy tale come true. The actress posted a photo with her girlfriend Ramona Agruma, a fashion and jewelry designer. The caption reads, "I thought I was searching for a Disney prince, but maybe what I really needed all this time was a Disney princess." Here at home, pop rock band Lainey puts up a fourth night in Manila for its A November to Remember tour. The show added because of high demand is scheduled on November 15 at the Mall of Asia Arena in Pasay. Tickets are now on sale. Initially, only 3 Lainey concerts in the country were announced, slated for the 11th to the 13th. And the wait is finally over for BTS ARMY's. The K-pop sensation's new album Proof is out. The 48-track anthology has works from the group's nearly 9-year run and 3 new songs. The music video for Yet to Come also dropped today. Take a look. BTS is set to perform tracks from Proof on Monday, June 13th to mark its 9th anniversary. This will stream live on the group's YouTube channel. And that's it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7. I'm Maya Rodriguez for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Do you sometimes feel weak and tired for no apparent reason? You might be suffering from a condition called anemia. Anemia occurs when a person lacks healthy red blood cells to carry oxygen around the body. This causes you to feel tired and weak, and in rare cases, it can even lead to death. Today, we'll learn about this condition and how best to treat it. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Let's welcome our guests for today. With us is Dr. Flor de Luna Zapata Messina. She is a hematologist from the University of Santo Tomas and Cardinal Santos Medical Center. Also with us is Dr. Ira Inductivo Yu. She's a gastroenterologist from the National Kidney and Transplant Institute, as well as the Diliman Doctors Hospital. Now, according to the World Health Organization, anemia remains to be a major global public health problem, with about 2.3 billion people affected by this condition. In the Philippines, studies show that a large percentage of the population suffers from micronutrient deficiencies, the most common being iron deficiency anemia. Dr. Messina, how does anemia become a public health issue, especially in a country like the Philippines?
There's a high incidence of anemia, and it should not be taken lightly because some mild symptoms like headache, dizziness, or weakness can be a cause of absenteeism at work. And so this affects the overall productivity of our workforce.
Are there areas in the country, Dr. Messina, that are usually affected by this condition?
The incidence actually is not based on the region, but more of age group. The risk factors or vulnerability depends on the age group.
There are several types of anemia, but the most common worldwide and in the Philippines are iron deficiency anemia, or IDA, and vitamin deficiency anemia. Dr. Messina, still, can you tell us more about these 2 common types of anemia?
Basically, there are 3 types of anemia when it is based on the cause. The most common is nutritional anemia. These are the iron deficiency, vitamin B12 and folic acid deficiency. The second would be the problems in production or bone marrow disorders. And the third is destruction of red blood cells, or what we call hemolytic anemia. But the two are less common.
Now, let's discuss the symptoms ng anemia. Dr. Ira, what signs should people look out for about this condition?
The level of the anemia would dictate the severity of the symptoms. So if you're just having very mild decrease in hemoglobin, people might just not, in fact, notice it. Or the manifestation would just be easy fatigability. Baka dati nakaka-jogging ng 15 minutes. This patient now could not even tolerate 5 minutes of jogging. Some patients would also have some sort of hingal. Dati, they can probably walk from the first floor to the 5th floor without any difficulty, but now would take only 2 flights of stairs, and probably that's all that they can do. Severe anemia, though, especially if acute, probably secondary to an acute GI blood loss, can lead even to collapsing of the patients, or in some patients, they can even have myocardial infarction or even stroke.
The usual suspect in iron deficiency anemia is poor nutrition, but anyone can still experience anemia acutely, especially if they are experiencing bleeding or have had surgery. Dr. Ira, what are the typical causes ba ng anemia para ma-aware ang ating mga viewers?
It could be due to iron deficiency, which, by the way, is the most common cause. And iron deficiency could not only be due to nutritional deficiency, but it may also be due to GI blood loss. Anemia could be due to anemia of chronic disease. So these are people who are chronically debilitated. These are people with chronic kidney diseases, with malignancies. Anemia can also be due to bone marrow defects. I think this is best exemplified by your aplastic anemia and your leukemia and lymphoma. And anemia can also be drug-induced. There are several medications that can bring about anemia. Example would be chemotherapeutic drugs, your immunosuppressant azathioprine, and even some hepatitis C medications like ribavirin and interferon. So basically, the way to analyze anemia is to zero in what is the cause, and from there on, treat the patient accordingly.
Dr. Ira, what gastrointestinal disorders increase the risk for anemia as well as iron deficiency anemia in particular?
Anything that has the potential to bleed in the GI tract can lead to anemia because of blood loss. So you can have bleeding peptic ulcers as cause of your iron deficiency anemia. You can have colonic ulcers, colonic malignancy. You can even have your inflammatory bowel diseases like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Remember that blood loss doesn't always equate to obvious blood loss. There are some people who are bleeding mildly, not even prominent in terms of their stool color. This is what we call occult bleeding. So basically, any lesion that will cause either an obvious bleed or an occult bleed can lead also to iron deficiency anemia. For a lot of people also, they might forget that intestinal parasitism can also cause some degree of anemia. So this is particularly true for our children who just put anything in their mouth and accidentally would ingest some warm eggs there. So we have to be careful also with our kids.
When we come back, we'll discuss who are at risk of developing this condition and its complications to our health. Only here on MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk, where caring is our calling. Babies and the elderly are among the age demographics who are prone to anemia. Dr. Messina, why are these age groups more likely to have anemia?
The 4 vulnerable age groups are, number 1, the reproductive age group, especially females who are menstruating, because we lose iron in the body every month during your menstruation. The question is, why are not all of the women who are menstruating anemic. This is because they are able to replace it adequately in their diet. Now, the second vulnerable group would be the children on their rapid growth, okay, because of an increased utilization of iron. Likewise with pregnant women, because you have two individuals utilizing iron, the baby and the mother. And fourth is the elderly population, because they are prone to malnutrition.
Gastroenterologists tend to receive patients with symptoms of anemia. Dr. Ira, how does having anemia complicate existing gastrointestinal diseases?
I think it's more of a person having an untreated, misdiagnosed or undiagnosed GI tract disease, and there is an existing anemia there. So this GI tract, like for example, a colonic malignancy that is not properly diagnosed over the years, would lead to some degree of minimal blood loss, and that would worsen the anemia over the next few months or few years. So it's actually an undiagnosed GI tract disease that worsens or complicates the anemia.
Dr. Messina, how does anemia lead to other complications? And when is anemia the result of a pre-existing lung as well as heart condition?
The blood is circulating in the whole body. It affects each and every organ in the body. So from neurologic, from the brain, it can cause cognitive impairment. Cardiac and pulmonary are very closely related to the blood. And so anemia can worsen a pre-existing cardiovascular disease like MI and heart failure. And then other organs like renal failure, so they both can cause and can worsen each other. Generally, it will also affect the performance to work and physical exertion. So it may generally affect not only the organs, but also the quality of life of the patient.
Dr. Messina, what happens when a pregnant woman is anemic?
It can affect the baby, especially in the growing period. So that's the first trimester and second trimester. It can also affect the outcome on the third trimester. So anemia is associated with morbidity and mortality to both the mother and the baby.
What tests should one do to determine if a person does have anemia, Dr. Messina?
It's actually easy and inexpensive. The screening test would be the complete blood count. And then when the hemoglobin is below normal, so it depends on the gender. If males, the normal hemoglobin is about 130 grams per liter to 170 grams per liter. So if it's less than 130, then that's anemia. For female, it's less than 120 grams per liter. So as simple as that. And then the other tests like your reticulocyte count, peripheral blood smear, and iron studies would come after.
Can you tell us, Dr. Messina, what are the healthy hemoglobin values for adult men and women?
So the healthy hemoglobin values or normal values for men is 130 grams per liter to 170 grams per liter. And for females, it is 120 grams per liter to 140 grams per liter.
Now, Dr. Ira, with regards to anemia, is it possible that many patients do not see the symptoms early? Meaning the early signs of anemia are often overlooked. So it is only when the patient is in maybe advanced stages of anemia that they seek proper consult.
Yes, that's possible, especially if the anemia is already chronic. If people have been used to a little bit of lower hemoglobin, actually they don't feel something bad. It's as if the body already adapted to a lower hemoglobin level. So it depends on the chronicity of the symptoms. If the anemia happens very quickly, okay, then the patient would manifest with all of these manifestations immediately. But if the anemia is happening gradually on a chronic basis, it is possible that the patient can adopt, possible that the patient might not be symptomatic, not until the hemoglobin drops to very critical levels.
Coming up, we'll give you tips on how to prevent this condition. Only here on MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. So when it comes to managing anemia, what can we do? Dr. Ira, let's talk about that. Is having a healthy diet enough?
Healthy diet is definitely essential if you want to prevent anemia and treat anemia, because any nutritional deficiencies, specifically in the nutrients of iron and folic acid and vitamin B, can also exacerbate anemia. From a gastroenterologist point of view, there should be a regular test, specifically if you reach like 45 or 50 years old. We usually recommend, as part of a screening, an FOBT or an FIT to detect for possible colon malignancy, because they can also bring about anemia.
Let's talk about the foods that should be avoided again.
Some literatures have pointed out that if you are taking in iron-rich foods, there should not be any simultaneous intake of foods that are rich in calcium or calcium supplements, for that matter, on the notion only that calcium can bind to some extent iron and hence indirectly decrease iron absorption.
Now, Dr. Messina, how should people diagnosed with anemia exercise when one of their more common symptoms is that they feel tired all the time?
For patients with severe anemia, that's a hemoglobin of less than 70 grams per liter, exercise or physical activity should be limited because they will feel the symptoms more with these activities. While the mild anemia, like a hemoglobin of at least 100, and if it's chronic, then they're actually used to that level already. There's no physical activity limitation.
What's the best way for them to recover from the symptoms that they feel?
For the nutritional deficiency anemia, it can be prevented and easily treated. So the way to treat it is to give adequate supplement with the diet, of course, and also vitamin supplements, vitamin and mineral supplements. And once they recover, when the hemoglobin is improving, then they can go back to their usual physical activity. We advise them to eat iron-rich foods, and these are red meat. There are also vegetables which are high in iron: spinach, broccoli, tomatoes, and asparagus. They contain also iron. While your vitamin B12 rich sources are meat, fish, and seafoods, your folate-rich foods are green leafy vegetables. So these are the things that should be taken for patients with nutritional anemias. And then for the treatment, diet will not suffice. You need to supplement them with oral supplement.
Now, before we go, Dr. Ira, do you have any advice or tips for our viewers?
The lesson that we learned from this preceding discussion is really to go on a healthy diet, a diet that is rich in protein, in nutrients, specifically iron and some of the vitamins, vitamin B, vitamin C also because it helps in iron absorption, and also with folic acid.
And Dr. Messina, do you have any tips or advice for our viewers?
Anemia is actually preventable, especially the deficiency anemias. So please get your blood works and also take foods that are rich in iron, folate, and vitamin B12. So basically a balanced diet.
Thank you, hematologist Dr. Flor de Luna Zapata Messina and gastroenterologist Dr. Ira Inductiva Yu for being with us today and sharing your tips and expertise about anemia. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.